Hi, this is Scott Barrett. We've just landed in Juneau, Alaska. This is a very interesting area. The only way into Juneau is either by boat or airplane. Alaska is 663,000 square miles in size and makes up a very large portion of the United States. We'll be spending the next month or so driving around Alaska and the Yukon Territory. We'll take a look at some of the main attractions in these areas and also do some salmon and halibut fishing on the Kenai Peninsula. About 2 million people visit Alaska every year, and cruising is a popular way to do it. A cruise ship can be an excellent way to visit many of the coastal cities in Alaska. Many cruises include land excursions up to Denali or Fairbanks. Many of these salmon will never make it very far upstream. They'll end up dying before they get into the main part of the river. Pink salmon also develop a hooked snout with big teeth. This park can get more than 400,000 visitors a year, most of them by the way of cruise ship. Most of them head up the west arm to Marjorie Glacier. If you're going to be loading a car or different vehicle on the ferry, you should arrive at least an hour early. It can take time to get the larger vehicles like motorhomes and RVs loaded safely. Normally this complicated process is done very quickly. Well, we just pulled out of Juneau, Alaska. We're on the ferry boat heading up to Haines, Alaska. This is a very beautiful ride up the Inside Passage. It's about a 4-hour trip. Even though the temperatures can be a little cool this time of day, the views are too amazing to pass up. The Canadian officers at the border are usually very nice, but they do have an important job to do. Even though it's a smaller facility than you may see elsewhere, they're still very thorough. It's a good idea to have all your papers and permits in order before you get there. A valid passport will meet their requirements. Traveling into the Yukon, you'll notice the air becomes very clean and clear. It's said that many of the cities and towns in the Yukon Territory have the least amount of pollution of any place in the world. There's several different ways to see Alaska. You can either rent a car and come up and stay in different hotels in different cities, or you can rent an RV. A lot of people come up here and rent an RV and travel all over Alaska, and it can work out pretty inexpensive that way also. The water, like the air in the Yukon Territory, is some of the cleanest you'll find any place in the world. Well, we got a couple of moose down here. Let's sneak down this trail, see if we can get close to these moose and get some pictures of them. It's also very common to see moose around these marshy pond areas. This is one of their favorite types of habitat. Huge amounts of snow and ice will accumulate in these mountains during the frigid winter months. As the temperature begins to warm in the spring, millions of gallons of water run off into the valleys below. Some of this melt runoff comes from glaciers. Almost all the mountain ranges in the Yukon and Alaska have glaciers. The city of Fairbanks began to grow quickly. In 1906, the federal government established an experimental farming station in the area. Wyatt Earp opened the Dexter Saloon in downtown Nome. Although less honorable but more lucrative than mining for gold, saloon owners made a fortune peddling liquor and running gambling tables. Some violence did erupt over claims staked on rivers outside of town. Even though law enforcement in Nome was minimal at best, they were able to make a show of force at times. Just keeping your claim could be as hard as working it in many locations around Nome. There's another great attraction that brings many tourists to Fairbanks and the hot springs. Fairbanks is one of the best places in the world to view the northern lights. The aurora borealis, also known as the northern lights, is caused by the collision between gases and electrically charged particles in the Earth's atmosphere. The beautiful curtains of color vary due to what types of gases are colliding. From the village, it's not far to the Denali Park main entrance. Many cruise ship passengers that visit Anchorage or Seward may go on land excursions to Denali. The drive from Anchorage to Denali is 237 miles. Denali is one of the most breathtaking places on the planet. Even though there are more black bears in the area, you're more likely to see a grizzly bear as you're traveling along the road. There are over 1,400 moose in the park. An adult cow moose can weigh around 800 pounds. Some of the larger bull moose can stand 6.5 feet high at the shoulder. Anchorage offers a tremendous amount of activities from dog sledding to whale watching. And one of my favorite activities is going to one of the fantastic restaurants around the city. We'll spend the night here in Anchorage, and tomorrow we'll head out to the Kenai Peninsula. This time of year, brown bears spend a lot of time around the rivers feeding on salmon in order to build up their body fat for the long winter ahead. Female bears will bring their cubs down to the rivers and spend most of the summer feeding on salmon or any other type of fish they can catch. Filleting one of these red salmon is quite easy. Just run the fillet knife down the backbone until it comes out at the tail. Stellar sea lions are considered non-migratory. There's no large movement between their summer and winter grounds.
Yeah, that's a good one.
We began to catch bigger halibut as the morning went on, but halibut in these waters can weigh as much as 300 pounds. Well, it's been raining very heavy for about 4 days. We had to stay several days in Beaver Creek just waiting for the storm to pass. Parts of the Alaska Highway can get pretty washed out when they have this much rain. But today it's supposed to start clearing up, so we're going to try to make it all the way to Whitehorse. After a heavy rainstorm, you're more likely to see a lot of animals. As soon as the weather lets up, moose and caribou like to get out right away and start feeding on the wet grass and leaves. No matter how many of these amazing animals you see, you'll never get tired of watching them. As we travel across the vast, beautiful Yukon Territory again, it reminds me of how pristine this land really is. Whitehorse is a very large city compared to most towns in the Yukon. Most of the fast food restaurant chains are found here. The population of Whitehorse is just a little bit over 25,000 people. Many people will go on canoe trips from Whitehorse to different locations. Some of the more popular trips would be from Whitehorse to Carmacks, or from Whitehorse all the way to Dawson City. This part of the river that runs through Whitehorse this time of year has very clear water. As we come around the corner to Nary's Lake, we notice smoke in the air. Like many other areas in Alaska and the Yukon, there's been a lot of forest fires lately. Forest fires can be deadly for many of the large animals that live in these areas. If they're not killed by the fire, they can be pushed into new land that they're unfamiliar with. Especially for bears that are getting ready to hibernate shortly, this can be deadly. This grizzly bear may travel many miles before it feels safe again. Skagway is a major destination for many cruise ship passengers traveling around Alaska. We'll spend the rest of the day checking out the different gift shops and museums in downtown Skagway. In the park in downtown Skagway, there's a plaque and statue dedicated to the courageous men who climbed up the dangerous Chilkoot Pass during the Klondike Gold Rush. Standing in this location, looking down the inlet, it's hard to imagine what once took place here. Thousands of people, many tons of supplies and mining gear stacked in huge piles all around the area. General stores, restaurants, and even a hotel existed in this same spot many years ago. The Canadian Mounted Police would not let prospectors enter Canada unless they had at least 1 year's supply of gear. Because of the extremely hazardous terrain and bad weather, thousands of stampeders and their pack animals died along the trail. Eventually, the lucky ones would reach Chilkoot Pass, also known as the Golden Staircase, 1,500 steps chiseled in the snow and ice. Well, we're back in Juneau getting ready to fly out. We've had an exciting trip around Alaska. Alaska truly is a land of adventure. I hope some of the information in the video is helpful to you. I'm Scott Barrett. Thanks for joining us.